218 BC. Before the first Roman spear was thrown, before Hannibal could challenge the greatest republic in the Mediterranean, his army was already dying. Not to Roman legions, but to snow, to ice, to hunger, and to a mountain range that had protected Italy for centuries. The Romans believed no army could cross the Alps and still be strong enough to fight. Hannibal intended to prove them wrong. The mountains intended to prove everyone wrong, because sometimes the first battle of a war is fought not against an enemy, but against the land itself. By the autumn of 218 BC, Hannibal had already achieved what many commanders would have considered impossible. He had marched his army out of Iberia, crossed the Pyrenees, forced his way over the Rhone River, and advanced hundreds of kilometers toward northern Italy. Every obstacle behind him had been conquered. Only one remained: the Alps. Towering above the horizon, their snow-covered peaks formed a wall stretching across Europe. For the Romans, these mountains were more than a geographical border. They were a natural fortress. No massive army was expected to cross them, especially not as winter approached. That confidence came from the mountains themselves. The higher Hannibal climbed, the more the Alps transformed into a weapon. The roads became narrow ledges carved into cliffs. Many climbed above 2,500 meters, where freezing temperatures, thin air, and early snowstorms could strike without warning. Supply wagons became nearly useless. Pack animals struggled to keep their footing. Entire columns stretched across dangerous slopes, where a single collapse could send hundreds into the abyss below. The Alps did not need walls. They did not need soldiers. Their geography alone was enough to stop an invasion. Yet Hannibal kept climbing, because attacking Rome through the mountains offered something no conventional route ever could: surprise. If he reached Italy from the north, Rome would be forced to fight a war it had never prepared for. It was an extraordinary gamble. But with every step upward, the mountains reminded him that surprise came with a price. The forests disappeared behind them. Bare rock replaced fertile valleys. The air grew colder. Every breath became heavier. Every kilometer demanded more food, more strength, and more time. Then the mountains found their first allies. Hidden among the cliffs, local tribes watched the Carthaginian army struggle through the narrow passes. They knew every ridge, every blind corner, every unstable slope. When they attacked, they needed only moments. Boulders crashed onto the marching columns, spears rained from above. Panicked horses threw their riders from the narrow trails. Pack animals carrying precious food plunged into ravines, taking weeks of supplies with them. The attackers disappeared almost as quickly as they had come. Hannibal could defeat an army. He could not defeat an enemy that melted back into the mountains. And with every delay, winter moved closer. The real battle began only after the ambushes ended. As the army climbed higher, the Alps stopped feeling like a landscape. They became a living opponent. Snowstorms swallowed entire valleys within hours. Powerful winds erased the trails ahead, while fresh snow concealed loose rocks and deadly drop-offs beneath every step. Soldiers who had marched together for months suddenly disappeared into white silence. The cold was no longer weather, it was a predator. Armor froze. Hands lost their grip. Exhausted men who stopped to rest often never stood again. At the same time, hunger spread through the columns. Every animal lost on the cliffs meant less food. Every blocked trail meant another day without reliable supplies. Soon, the army was fighting two battles at once, one against the mountain, and another against starvation. Even Hannibal's famous war elephants, the most terrifying weapons of his campaign, struggled against a world they had never been meant to enter. Their enormous weight broke unstable paths. Their feet slipped across frozen stone. Several collapsed during the crossing, while others survived only through the relentless efforts of their handlers. The higher the army climbed, the slower it moved. Every delay strengthened the mountain. Every step forward demanded another sacrifice. Some soldiers disappeared beneath avalanches. Others slipped from icy ledges into ravines that no one could reach. There was no time to recover the dead. There was barely enough strength to save the living. By the time Hannibal approached the highest passes, he understood a painful truth. Rome was no longer his greatest obstacle. The Alps were. And before his soldiers could fight for victory, they first had to survive the mountain. After days of relentless climbing, Hannibal's army finally reached the highest point of the crossing. The summit offered a breathtaking view. Beyond the endless ridges lay the plains of northern Italy. For the first time in weeks, the destination was no longer an idea. It was visible. Yet the men standing on that frozen ridge barely resembled the confident army that had left Iberia months before. Thousands were missing. Some had fallen during tribal ambushes. Others had vanished beneath collapsing cliffs. Many had simply frozen where they lay. The Alps had claimed them one by one. Sensing despair spreading through his exhausted ranks, Hannibal gathered the survivors. Ancient writers describe him pointing toward the distant Po Valley. Somewhere beyond those mountains lay Rome's allies. Beyond them waited the campaign that had brought them across half a continent. His words rekindled something the mountain had almost taken away: hope. For a brief moment, the soldiers forgot the freezing nights and empty stomachs. The hardest part, they believed, was finally behind them. They were wrong. Descending the Alps proved even more dangerous than climbing them. Fresh snow hid unstable ground beneath every step. Entire sections of the trail had collapsed under the weight of early winter storms. In places, the roads simply no longer existed. The army was forced to stop and carve a new path into the mountainside. Every hour spent rebuilding the route consumed precious food. Every delay weakened the survivors even further. Animals continued to slip from the icy slopes. Equipment disappeared into deep ravines. Even the smallest mistake could end in death. When Hannibal finally led his army out of the mountains, they had accomplished something few believed possible. But the Alps had made certain that victory came at an extraordinary cost. The Romans could hardly believe the reports. Hannibal had crossed the Alps. He had appeared in northern Italy from a direction no one thought possible. Strategically, it was one of the greatest surprises in military history. But behind that remarkable achievement stood a brutal reality. The army that emerged from the mountains was no longer the force that had begun the journey. The exact numbers remain debated by historians. The outcome does not. By the time Hannibal reached Italy, he had lost well over half of the army that had entered the Alps. Veteran infantry were gone. Thousands of horses had disappeared. Most of the pack animals carrying food and equipment had been lost. Even the famous war elephants had suffered devastating losses, with only a handful surviving long enough to enter Italy. No Roman general had achieved this. No great battle had caused it. The mountains had. Before Hannibal ever faced the Roman legions, geography had already reshaped his campaign. His invasion would continue. His greatest victories still lay ahead. But every battle from this point forward would be fought with an army far smaller than the one he had intended to bring. The Alps had not stopped Hannibal. They had simply ensured he would pay for every future victory before the war had truly begun. Despite everything, Hannibal refused to retreat. Within months, he defeated Roman armies at the Trebia. He ambushed them at Lake Trasimene. Later, at Cannae, he delivered one of the most devastating defeats in the history of warfare. Those victories secured his place among history's greatest military commanders. But they also overshadowed another story, the story of the enemy he could never defeat. The Alps had no king, no army, no banners flying above their peaks. Yet they accomplished what Rome could not. They weakened one of the finest armies of the ancient world before the first decisive battle was ever fought. That is the hidden power of geography. It shapes wars long before generals begin drawing battle plans. It decides where armies can march, how quickly supplies can move, how long soldiers can survive, and whether an invasion is even possible. Sometimes, the landscape itself becomes the most powerful weapon on the battlefield. History remembers Hannibal as the commander who crossed the Alps. It should also remember the mountains that nearly destroyed him. The Alps did not choose sides. They did not defend Rome out of loyalty. They defended Italy simply by existing. Snow, ice, thin air, steep cliffs, distance. Together, they became a force no army could negotiate with. Hannibal reached Italy. He achieved the impossible, but he never defeated the mountains. They had already taken thousands of lives, shattered his logistics, and weakened the army that would challenge Rome. Long before Roman legions earned their victories, the Alps had won the first battle. Because geography does not negotiate, it does not surrender, and it does not care how brilliant a commander may be. Sometimes, the greatest general in history is the land beneath your feet.